listening to Inclusive AF with Jackye Clayton and Katie Van Horn.
How are you?
Hi, good. What are you doing?
How's it going, Jackie? Hey, Katie. So happy to meet y'all.
Yes, and Katie's not here, just for pictures here.
Oh, hello. Well, I love this photo of her. I feel like I'm with her in presence.
Right.
I am a real human. I'm just plugging my hi. I'm just
No worries.
We've just moved house, and so my office is like a schmozzle, but that's okay.
I like that. Schmozzle. I think
It's an
I used to remember
underutilized word, right?
Yeah.
So good. I'm so excited about this. I've been really excited all week. I'm just gonna move a plant so it looks a bit better, but I'm listening. I'm listening.
Yes, no worries. And I'm usually not sitting in my house. I usually am sitting in my office, and my dogs, so they kind of like don't know what's happening right now. Like keep staring at me, and they're like,
You okay?
maybe I should try to go outside. Yes. So my office is just a little bit farther down. It's not like I have to take a golf cart or anything, but they're delivering a computer to me.
Yeah.
We had a company meeting this week,
Yeah.
and they saw the status of my computer. And they also saw that every time I try to open Outlook, it shuts down. And they were like,
this is not going to work out for us.
Yeah. They're like, how long have you been doing this? I'm like, oh, a couple of years. They're like, like that's ridiculous. And they saw that I don't have A, S, D, C, like all of those letters are gone now from like over aggressive typing, I guess. So they were like, you need a new computer.
Oh my gosh, over aggressive typing. That's amazing. Can you do a LinkedIn post about that?
I should do over. And I think it's a special group of people. I mean, and they know who they are. The ones that don't have that ASD, they know.
So I'm not that person. So I'm just like, I'm literally sitting, I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. It's so, I mean, I thought I was an aggressive typer, but obviously you got some things to teach me.
Like the ones like where you can always hear and they sound like they are like a ticket person, like they're firmly taking notes that you hear all the time.
Oh, really?
Like when you try to be quiet, I also can't whisper very well. Like I whisper like this. Like I try to whisper.
Well, you're here to be heard. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Like you've just got stuff to say. Like I feel like that's a good thing. That's what we try and raise our kids to be, and how we try to mentor, right? Like use your voice, etc. So
I don't know. I overkilled on that too. My kid's like 23 and they're like, let me see. And they'll just keep looking around the house to find things to talk about. And they always find things to talk about.
I have a 2-year-old, so I need to learn all of your wisdom.
Listen, yeah, because some things overkill. I overshot. And it's like
really?
we're just
what
dealing with it now.
Jackie?
Oh, I think part of it is like, stick to what you believe, which makes them really inflexible.
Okay.
All the time. I get concerned. Like they'll be like, but that doesn't make sense. Like they almost failed poetry class. They're a math major.
And so they're logical. I love that for them.
Right. But a little too logical. I don't know. Maybe it's just genetic. Like, write a poem as if you were a window. And they would be like, but I'm not a window. Like there's no
I sort of love that too, because it's like it kind of comes back to like they've got something to say, and if it's ridiculous, they're just not here.
They're like, I'm not playing that game.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like, why would I be a window? They're like, but just pretend. They're like, I would never pretend to be a window. I'm sure of it. Like since they were like 5 years old.
Honestly, I'm with them on this. It feels like a dumb exercise.
Yeah. It was like when they did flowers and they were like, but what if it's a this color flower? And they'd be like, it wouldn't be a flower. Or like, whoa. They're like 5. They're like, honestly, I sort of admire that. Like I understand why for the education folks that's like a disaster, but I also sort of like I'm like here for the chutzpah, I think actually, to be honest, one of the things that was really funny is when people meet my kid, they're usually like, whoa. Because they're also like, they're a math major, but they're also like international super fashion models. So when they meet them, they're like, there's a lot going on.
Well, and isn't it funny how society puts us in boxes? And it's like, you can be in a math major box, or you can be in a supermodel stunning, like it's not, maybe that's because we don't have a lot of role models of that. I don't know.
I don't even know if we don't have a lot of role models, but then you have to add on top of that, you have to be like a full extrovert to be like.
Yeah.
I do math and I model. Now what? And those are two like categories that sometimes people don't like telling people.
Are they extroverts?
I don't know. I don't know if that's the word. I patterned this, and I think my mom patterned this, where it's like you do all of this behavior extrovertedly, but not really an extrovert.
Yeah, I remember my mum said to me once, the world is made for extroverts. And I don't know if she is an extrovert, but I've never forgotten that actually, because I think I probably skew extrovert, but yes. I also am very aware that there's a lot of privilege that comes with that. Do you know what I mean? Because it's
yes.
easy for me. And if I was an introvert, my energy would be even more depleted and it would be so much harder. You know what I mean?
It is so true. Okay, so last week, here's a firm example, and we'll just record it and whatever. It's like, we'll do. By the way, this is the Inclusive AF podcast. This is how we end up doing things. But this is like a firm example, real example. Like last week, I got
is your
really
audio?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
We're good.
Okay, great.
I get really nervous. Like sometimes I get nervous and I don't want to say something, right? So then somebody said something that hurt my feelings, and I was like, that hurt my feelings. And then they were sad. Right. So then it was like my responsibility for making them sad, but not to self-advocate. And then I was like, what do you do? Do you speak up or do you not speak up? And did I just ruin this person's life? Or is it really not that big of a deal? How do we have these conversations? And I used to be like, you really have to be extroverted to get your point across. You don't have to do that as a regular practice of getting your energy, but you do have to practice saying what you're thinking or what you're feeling or advocating for yourself. You can't expect other people to advocate for you.
You can't. But then to your point, it's also not your emotional labor to take on if they then take offense to you enforcing boundaries, you know?
Right. But that's the other part, right? So especially in talking about women, I think that what you're saying is so spot on, because you have to be able to, like, we don't have a lot of those role models. We don't have a lot of role models where all of a sudden, if you are speaking like that, you're no longer supposed to be an executive. You're supposed to be in politics. Right. Or a pastor. Like all of a sudden, wait a minute, you're just putting so much work. So now I have to have a full ideological belief or be willing to go into that type of business.
Well, I think it's interesting as well. Something that is coming out for me as I hear you speak is like the idea of role models for women in particular around boundary setting. And not just boundary setting, but then like taking those boundaries and being respectful of those. Like, I don't know if I really, and I don't know if this is the same for you, Jackye. I'm not sure if I saw a lot of good role models of particularly women who set strong but fair boundaries. I don't think I had a lot of great role models for that. I don't know about you.
The flip side of that, which was interesting, is that I worked for all women growing up. Like from the time I was 16, like I worked at a Subway. The owner was a woman, like all of these jobs. So then when I started working in like diverse environments, I just was such the asshole because nobody else spoke like that. Like I'd be like, I don't think that's right. And they'd be like looking at me like, that's not the way you're supposed to. You're not supposed to speak up and you're only 27.
It's funny that you call yourself the asshole because to me, I'm assuming objectively you weren't an asshole. You just had standards. Normal. You just wanted to speak up. You didn't want to put up with BS behavior, right?
And that was the normal pattern because we didn't have that part.
Yeah.
And I was like, I didn't have role models of people who had to set boundaries.
Yeah, interesting.
So it was like always like, let's just all get together, let's share our ideas and we'll pick the best one and we'll just roll with it. And then to be in an environment where, and I was still relatively young and naive too, where I didn't know that the first opportunity I had, and well, now we have to turn it around. Look, it's like, now it's turning into like the Jackye show. I'm going to have my therapy on there. But the first person that I talked to and the way that I advanced my career is I used to talk to this guy in the elevator every day. We went to work at the same time and we left at the same time and we spoke every day. And then he started asking me all these questions and I was, I think 24 years old. And then I got called up to a meeting. My boss was like in a panic because it turned out he was like the CEO of the company. I had no idea that he was. And he invited me to this board meeting and said, me and Jackye had this conversation I want you to share what you shared with me on the elevator. And I did. And then the next week I was on a corporate jet. We were flying to all these places and I was responsible for like membership interaction. Like, yeah, it was like this whole thing. And because I talked to him in the elevator. So the world does belong to extroverts. Even if you're faking it till you make it, you have to be able to advocate for yourself.
Well, and also what I love about that story, though, is firstly, what a great leader to strike up that conversation every day. Like both of you, for him as well, though, also, right? Like to have this conversation with someone more junior in the organization and then to not only have that conversation, but to listen.
Right.
That's what I think is very interesting. And like how bolshy of you and how amazing for you then to like lean into that. And that's so impressive. And to me, the lesson from that, I think for all of our listeners is like the power of relationships. And I think whether you're introverted or extroverted, I think we all have the capacity to develop and strengthen really quality relationships. And that's, as you know, Jackye, how you get everything done in life, in business, in work, for better or worse. I don't know if that's fair and reasonable, but it's the way the world works, right? It's like the whole thing of it's not what you know, it's who you know. And in this instance, you inadvertently happen to know the CEO, which is kind of amazing.
I agree with you. I mean, I feel like that's the way you network through all of these things. And I have watched, I know you're in New York City and my oldest lives in Brooklyn. They live in Bay Ridge and New York is so I was like, you can't stay in the house. They work for a job where they work remote. I was like, you can't stay in the house. And now they have so many friends and they have so many experiences and so many cool things. And I think that is something else that we didn't have. Like, well, my generation, it was like, these are your 5 friends. And then you'll meet another friend at some other event by happenstance. But now you can be more specific with your relationship. I feel like
and
you
so
have more
curated.
Opportunities.
And to your point around New York City, it's like if you love to do needlepoint while drinking beer and you're obsessed with gardening, you will find your niche of people in New York City. And
that
is one of the things that I love about it. It's like there is a place for everyone in the world, but especially in New York, because it's such a melting pot of wonderful, wild humans doing fascinating things in the world.
You are right. Well, I have lots of questions because I was reading in your background. We should tell everybody, since we've been getting to know each other, we'll let the listeners know, tell people about Meggie Palmer.
Yeah, well, I'm so excited to be chatting. So yeah, my name's Meggie Palmer. I do live in New York City, despite the accent. I've been in Manhattan I'm actually in Brooklyn now, but I migrated here 7 years ago on the weekend, actually. So originally Australian, grew up on a farm there. I was a journalist for a really long time. Long story short, I had an experience of the gender pay gap, became really interested in how could you solve for that problem. And so I started a company called PepTalkHer, and it's all about closing the gender pay gap and helping folks earn more money and get promoted faster. So that's what we do. We've grown to a huge community of about 70,000 folks globally. We have an app, we have a heap of courses, and a big team of executive coaches that support individuals, but also HR and executive teams for employers of choice and like big employers who want to retain diverse talent.
But that's so different. Like, how do you go from journalism? It's like, did you say, oh, this pay gap is a lot worse, maybe I can help some people, to going over to here? So how did that transition happen?
Yeah, well, basically it started because I was pissed off, frankly, as a lot of entrepreneurs will tell you. It was like something that annoyed them or some pain point that they observed. And for me, I basically found out I was getting paid less than the men in the newsrooms that I sat next to. And so I just thought it was a mistake. I was so naive, Jackye. I was like, oh, well, they'll just fix it, obviously. And they were like, so if you don't like it, you can quit or take us to court. And I was like, what?
Because I was also serious.
Yeah, truly. And to be fair, this was more than a decade ago. Equally not okay. Still illegal even at that point. But I was like, I'm a child of the 80s and I was raised to like, if you see something, say something. And my parents very much like gave me this ethos of like women can do anything and like girls can do anything. Like whether that was true or not, that was certainly the rhetoric that we were fed, which is great for my sister and I and my brother. But anyway, so I was just frustrated. And so then I just started a side hustle to kind of figure this out, unpack, and honestly like open up my eyes to the fact of the world that was going on that naively through my own privilege, I hadn't actually realized up until that point, which, you know, is a whole nother conversation we can unpack. But yeah, then just became really passionate about how could you change that, organically started helping friends of friends and friends, cousins, sisters, whatever. And then it just kind of grew and grew and grew. And we had to figure out a way to scale it. And so the app was born and all sorts of things. So here we are.
Do you think, so I wonder this a lot. Mm-hmm. Do you think when you find out about the salary, we always hear about the salary. Like I'm always like pushing the boundaries. I do the studies of what my salary should be. I'm always paranoid, like it's going to be like even $1 more. Like people know that they think, like, do you think they do it? Are they doing it on purpose? Are they doing it because people aren't asking for enough? Are they doing it because this is what somebody else tell you? Where do you think some of the reasons for the pay gap is?
I mean, it's
besides the misogyny, like besides that.
Yeah. Well,
are you looking for a podcast that talks about humanity as well as human resources? Listen to the Reciprocity with AG podcast, where leaders in workforce and human resources talk more about themselves, how they reciprocate to others, and how they have received unbelievable advice for some of their mentors and people they've worked with.
You know, there's folks who are much smarter than I am who've researched this for a lot longer than I have. And basically a big part of it is unconscious bias. So it's pretty rare that someone would sit down and be like, let's screw over Meggie and pay her less. You know what I mean? Like, but it's this systemic, you know, decades, generations of unconscious bias. And here's an interesting fact that kind of blows my mind in a bad way. And that is that the gender pay gap starts in childhood. Again, parents aren't bad people, but what we find is in 3 separate countries across 3 separate research studies, they've actually proven that little boys earn more allowance than little girls. What?
Stop
I know. Isn't that like the most wild? It's like, wait, what? So we see this gap genuinely creep in at about the age of 8. And so again, it's like, and the reason is there's a perception, quote unquote, that like, you know, chopping firewood or mowing the lawn is a tougher chore than say setting the dinner table or, you know, doing the laundry. Because we've been conditioned throughout society and throughout our grandparents, our great grandparents, all these, you know, generational blah, 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 that there's certain work that is tough and there's certain work that is easier. And so the tough work, the important work is valued at a higher price. And inevitably, the women's work is sadly valued lower. And so that's why, and then that perpetuates through childhood. And that's why we see teachers and nurses, overwhelmingly women, get paid less than, say, bankers and engineers. And by the way, even in nursing and education, there is a gender pay gap in favor of men. Even though it's an overwhelmingly female profession. So statistically, objectively, it should all ladder up, but no. So it's you know, it's one of those things like the gap is shifting, not as fast as we'd like. And the UN reckons we're looking at about 200 years away. And like you and I are just not really willing to sit around and wait for that, right? Because it's just like, what? So, you know, there's a whole bunch of stuff that we can do. There's a whole bunch of stuff that government can do in business, etc. But to my mind, it takes all of us like trying to like 0.5% here, 0.25% here, 1% change here so that we can, you know, try and close that gap sooner.
I feel like, you know, I'm looking at the example of like Salesforce a number of years ago when they were like, people aren't being paid fair. And then they balanced it out. And then looking at people getting bonuses or raises or whatever it was, and they've done it 3 times. Like there is a certain level of unconscious bias of getting that together. But how do you teach other people? Because that's the part that's fascinating. Like you work with other women and trying to get it together. So, you know, I'm curious because, you know, I want to get paid what I'm worth. Right?
Totally. Well, and to your point, just quickly touching on the Salesforce example, we actually work with Salesforce. They were one of our very first big corporate clients. So we've worked with them for, I don't even know now, pre-pandemic, however long ago that is. But what's so interesting about that, to your point, when they figured out, Layla Secker was one of the big folks internally who kind of advocated for them to kind of, you know, open their eyes to the fact that there was this pay gap. My understanding is that still to this day, they level set every single year. And every single year, a little bit of a gap creeps in. And again, it's not because managers at Salesforce are necessarily bad people. It's this unconscious bias that happens, right? And so it has to be that consistent practice, because otherwise our own stories and our own bias that we bring with us through our childhood, whatever, our previous life experiences creep in. But listen, there's a bunch of stuff that can be done to close the pay gap. Of course, we need like government policy. We need great business policy as well, where we really work at PepTalkHer with our communities at the grassroots level. So it's kind of like helping support individuals themselves. And, you know, a big part of that is firstly the awareness. You'd be surprised at how many people don't actually know that the gender pay gap exists. And secondly, that it may be impacting them. It may not as well. Not everyone is impacted, but chances are. And we always say to people, Jackye, like to your point around your own situation, when you're trying to understand the gender pay gap and what you should be asking for from a salary perspective, obviously you can do your Dr. Google search. There's a heap of resources on the internet, et cetera, et cetera. You know, some companies have really transparent pay bands, so you can obviously look into that. But the other thing, the big thing that I hear people forget to do all the time is actually anecdotally speaking to people. Because sometimes you'll go on the Glassdoors of the world and it'll be like, oh, the salary range is like $48,000 up to $480,000, which is like not that helpful. So making sure that you actually talk to folks who are in the industry or adjacent industries as well. And in particular men, preferably white men, because we know from statistics that they're more likely to be earning more. So actually having a conversation with them to understand like, what would their expectation be of this role? Like if they were in your shoes, what would the range be? Because the other thing is sometimes, Jackye, and I don't know about you and your listeners, but I wasn't really raised to talk about money. Like it was a bit of a, not a dirty word, but it wasn't very like kosher to talk about salary and like wealth and savings. It was like something you did maybe with your parents behind closed doors, but even then, not really. And so, you know, one of the big things that I think we can all do that is a little radical, which is kind of weird to even say, is to start to talk about money and to talk about our expectations and our goals. And even if you don't feel comfortable saying, you know, I'd really love to earn $300,000 this year or $150,000 or $600,000, whatever it is, even if you don't want to say that out loud, talking in ranges, I find really helps people. So saying like, you know, I would love to one day be earning six figures, or I would love to one day be north of $250,000 or something like that. And even when you're sharing information to say to people, look, if it was me going for this role, I wouldn't be accepting anything under 150. Like, so that you don't have to say exactly what's on your payslip, but just starting to have that transparent conversation can be super valuable.
Well, and I appreciate that the more you talk about it, then more you can have more conversations with, or getting mentors, or how did you do that? I was having a conversation with someone who had just started in their career and we were talking about their salary, and I guess I had a look on my face where I just didn't really flinch, and they were like, how much do you make? And I told them, and they were like, I want to make that one day. Like, how did you aspire to doing that? And I was like, well, I asked for it for starters. Like you have to ask for it. But I think, again, kind of talking what you're talking, either not knowing about money, but then also culturally, some people don't want to say, I am worth this amount of money, or this is worth, you know, based on what you're saying or the competencies. But we've screwed it up so bad at work of people figuring out what the skills, how to, you know, what is the value of this skill? What do you think when people are applying for jobs and they're seeing them online and they do have that wild range, because they still, we're getting better. People are getting better
in certain states. Like certain states, as you know, now have to have the band that's listed, etc. So some companies are being trailblazers in terms of the transparency piece, for sure.
What do you think people should do when they're asked, what do you want to make at this role? You just tell them, should you negotiate?
It's such a great question. And it's one of those things where it depends, which is annoying because I wish there was like a formula and I could just give you. So it depends, right? So if you're one of three people being considered for the role, and you know that you have a value set and points of difference, that means that you're in a real shot. Like at that point, maybe you can kick that can down the road a little bit further and have a really serious negotiation. So to me, it comes back to language. And that's one of the things that we teach in the programs that we run and the folks that we executive coach is like having phraseology and having sentences that you've prepared, that you've said out loud before, that you kind of like, and honestly, if you want to write it down on a piece of paper and take it in with you, there's no shame in that either. Like having your notes or having it written in your notepad so that if you get nervous, you can just reflect back to that. But saying things like, listen, clearly my experience and value is going to hugely contribute to this role. So I'm really excited to understand the budget and the compensation range that you all have planned for this position. And I'd love to have a further conversation with you about that. You know, and for folks that maybe not at that level where you don't know if you're in the shortlist, maybe you're one of 100 people who've applied. Again, depending on if you really need the job, because if you really need the job, if you're not going to be able to put food on the table or pay the mortgage, it's a different conversation. You have different leverage versus if you don't care. And if you're quite happy in your current role, but this is like a great plan B, then you could say things like, listen, I'm super well compensated where I am. So this would have to be a really healthy offer for me to consider taking the conversation further. So again, you're not saying I want 100, 300, 700 necessarily, but you're giving an indication, hey, I'm valuable. I'm looked after where I am, which says to them, wow, she's in demand. And it also kind of sets an expectation of like, this is how this relationship is going to go. And there's a boundary. I have value. I know that. And I need you to understand that as well. But again, in the current job market, it's a little difficult for folks. And I understand that. So if they have advertised a range, sometimes in the application form, they will allow you to put a range. So if you really want to be in the interview process, being within the range, as I understand it from recruiters and senior leaders, is going to give you a better chance. Sometimes when you put severely outside of the range at the higher end, you are automatically disqualified. Now, just because you put a number in the application doesn't mean that that's what you have to take the job for if you are, extended an offer. So everything is negotiable. Do you know what I mean? Up until the point, but it's really difficult. It is really, really difficult for people. If there's no salary range indicated, sometimes I know people who just leave that section blank if the form will allow it. Sometimes people lowball because they want to be considered. It's really difficult. And this is why I'm such a big fan of salary transparency, because without it, what we see is that women and folks of color are unfairly discriminated against, and that just keeps getting perpetuated.
And I mean, here's the hot take that people don't know. There's an actual number that the CFO has looked at. Yes. Like I always say, this is the lifetime range of the role.
Yeah.
Like, but this is what we budgeted for this role. This is what we're expecting to pay for the role, or this is what the last person made in the role. And this, but we also at our organization looks and we're like, this is what is a fair salary for this role.
Yeah.
This is what everybody's making. This is where, so that's where we're looking for someone within that range. But it does come from a place of privilege. Starting out, It's really good to know what you need to make. I find so many people don't even know, like, okay, how much is it gonna, where you would be happy and comfortable,
Totally. And the other thing is, like, I run a business, you run a business. It's like, the thing is that you also, everyone thinks the employer has all the power. It's like, I really want this fancy job. I really need this health insurance. And that can be true. And also, they're hiring you for a reason. And that reason, 9 times out of 10, is because you're going to add value or add revenue to that business line, right? Or make someone's life easier, which frees up their time to add value or add revenue to the business. So like, like there is a value that you're bringing to that organization. And also employers want you to be paid well. Like, we have a team, etc. We're not the level of Salesforce. We're not a Fortune 100 company. Equally, it's really annoying when my staff leave. That causes me stress. It causes me angst. It doesn't waste my time, but it takes up my time because I have to offboard. We throw farewell parties and I have to hire. It's like a whole process. I lose institutional knowledge. So the thing is, it's like people actually want to retain you. So if it means that I have to pay staff a little bit more, okay, does that eat into other parts of the business? Maybe, but does that give me time back? Does that reduce my stress? Yes, yes, and yes. So that's the other thing, right? Like often your employer or your boss will be happy to have a conversation, a candid and frank conversation about money if it means that they can retain you. And if you don't ask, you don't know, and I always say to people, you should be having a conversation about compensation every single year. Now, you may not get a raise every single year, but you got to have the conversation, right? And you've also got to be coming to the table with receipts, right? It's not just like, hey, I'm a lovely human, can I have a pay raise? It's not enough, right? You've got to be like, I hired 3 people successfully this year, which saved the company $30,000 in recruitment fees. I've, increased our productivity by 7%, which has meant that our NPS has gone up by 3%. I talked to the local stationery shop and negotiated a 10% discount, which is saving us $700 a month, whatever it is, right? Or I've increased sales by however much, which whatever. You can figure out what that is for you. Maybe you're involved in the employee resource groups. Maybe you started a mentoring and an intern program. It doesn't have to always be dollars and cents, but how are you adding value to the culture? And you got to track that, right? You've got to write it down. And that's why we built the PepTalkHer app, because bosses are busy, Bosses have got Netflix shows to watch too. You know, like they've got dozens of people to manage. They've got divorces that they're dealing with. They've got sick children. They've got renovation projects. People are busy. And so it's your job, I think, to keep yourself front of mind and the value that you're adding to the business front of mind, so that when the decisions are being made about promotions, about compensation, at least you're front of mind. They might still say no, but at least you know where you stand, right? Like, I think it's better for you to have that knowledge, and they might say, listen, the economy sucks. We're in a bit of trouble. There might be layoffs. I'd love to give you an extra 17,000. We can't, but I'd love to keep you. And then maybe you can say, well, listen, could you give me 4 days off the books at Thanksgiving, and we'll call it a day? You know, like, what else could you negotiate outside of compensation as well? Because that's the other thing. And Jackye, I'm sure you know this from your work. It's like, it's not just about the salary, like the dollars that you're getting in your paycheck. There's more to it as well.
That is so true. We were having me and my work bestie, we were just bickering back and forth, like, oh, this, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, and still, my worst day here is 10 times better than any day anywhere else. Like, you know, granted, I still want a new hoodie, like,
obviously,
or whatever we were complaining about. I don't remember.
Sure, yeah.
I don't remember if it was like, can't we just have a pizza lunch? I don't remember what it was. It wasn't significant. But it's like, I think you do have to put those things in mind.
Yeah.
But you also need to, I love the thought of putting it down and knowing your value and being able to have those conversations, because part of the reason people leave is that they don't feel like they're having impact. But like, did you have, first of all, maybe you didn't, rare, but maybe you don't even realize your own impact. And that's something else. I mean, my coach, I think, taught me the best lesson one day when I was like, this is what I'm working on. It's a little high stress. I need to talk to my boss about the things. And it was their way of, you know, they're an executive coach. So they talk in funny terms and said, do you feel like you're doing tasks that are outside of your title or your salary? Which no one ever asked me before. And I was like, no. They were like, so is it just time management? Like, do you need a time management? Like, is it you? I was like, oh my God.
But what a great question, because it's so easy and listen, I do this as well. Like, and that's when you know, my whole experience back when I was a correspondent, when I was getting paid less, I totally spiraled. I was like, F the world, woe is me, oh my gosh, you know, like blah, blah, like you just, you know, of course. And then I realized, like, I can keep blaming other people and I can keep spiraling, or I can actually take ownership over this and go, okay, what about this can I change? I can't change their opinions. I can't change their bias. But what I can do is this. What I can ask for is this. And what I love about the question that your executive coach is asking you is, she's like, Jackye, like, is that something that you can control? Right? Like, what is within your control? And I think that's such a powerful thing. And even, you know, the question, the point you made earlier, where you said your worst day in your current role is 10 times better than prior jobs that you've had. To me, that's an amazing opportunity for a moment of gratitude to feed that up the food chain to your leaders, to their leaders, to the board, whoever it is. Because everyone listening knows, like, we get so many emails every day or Slack messages or whatever. There's this problem, I need this fixed, this is an issue, blah, blah, blah. How many times a day do we get an email or a text that says, thank you, you're doing a great job? You know?
Girl, because that's the part that is, and when, you know, speaking from a place of privilege, but also understanding your role as you go through your career, like career journeys and title journeys, I think get really skewed and from having those conversations. I was looking, and especially I'm thinking of Black women. We were talking about working harder. And I was at this conference and they were saying, oh, we shouldn't have to work harder. You should be working smarter, doing things. And I said, I do have to work harder. And I was like, because my job is getting other people to work harder. That's my job. I need to work harder at getting other people to work harder. I'm not talking about turning all the widgets. And so making sure that people understand, like, you know, there is a certain amount of things that you can control, or things that you influence, or things that you can't. And then being able to put those to what your salary should be. And that's what we used to do in HR, was be able to say, these are the competencies that you have to, you know, for this role. This is the value of those competencies. These are the amount. And that's how you know also, am I not being paid for the work that I'm doing? Or am I getting overpaid and I'm not giving the value based on what the competencies are, not based on, but I'm working really hard. And I think that's what people always come back and say, I'm working hard, so I deserve this amount of money, without realizing what is your impact. And also, there's already, this conversation's been had behind closed doors, even if it's just the CEO and CFO. You may not have been privileged to the conversation, but the conversation's been had. So working harder, coming up with these wild things that you want to implement, it may not make an impact on what you get paid if they don't have the money to be able to give it. So you have to have those conversations every year.
Totally. And to your point, the conversations are happening often without you in the room. And so, you know, I hear a lot of frustration from folks in our community, and even with some of the corporates that we work with, you know, employees will say, well, I don't get that visibility with my manager. I don't get that visibility with leadership. And I think one of the reasons why companies love working with us and why they bring us in is because we actually train, you know, teams, staff, employee resource groups, women's networks, whatever it is. We train those individuals to say, you've got to be the person who's amplifying your value to your boss. So at least they know. They still may make a decision that you're not happy with, but at least then you've got a staff and a body of people who feel empowered to have those conversations, because the transparency of communication is important too. Because otherwise, to your earlier point, Jackye, people leave because they feel like they're not having an impact or they're not being heard. So sometimes they just want to be heard, and they just want to have the opportunity to send you an email once a month saying, here's the metrics that I've hit. And sometimes that's all folks need. Like, and it kind of blows people's minds sometimes when we talk to them. There's this concept that we have called the FYI only email, which is this idea that you should be consistently communicating to your boss what you've been achieving, the boulders you've been moving up the hill. Because if you only do that at your performance review once a year, guess what? If you've moved the wrong boulder, you might be getting moved out, right? Whereas if you can consistently, monthly, every 2 weeks, whatever it is, depending on your boss's communication tolerance, if you can consistently do that, they can pick up mistakes earlier, or they can give you kudos earlier, which again is going to keep people engaged, because people just want to feel heard. They want to hear the value and hear the impact, even if it's just like a thumbs up on Slack. Sometimes something as simple as that really can buoy people for another quarter, you know, because I think sometimes as managers, we think we don't have time to take everyone for lunch every week, whatever. And I don't think it has to be that. To our point earlier, our conversation about gratitude and just like saying, hey, well done. That was a really hard team meeting to run. It was awkward, but you handled it well. Like sometimes that's all people need to kind of give them that momentum to keep going, to keep failing, to keep trying again, right? As we all try to build these amazing cultures that we're looking for.
That's a great tip too, of, you know, letting people know, kind of managing up. But I think there's no but. It is a good thing that you should be able to do. I think you are trying to get, I think feedback is one of the things that is really difficult, making sure that you're getting feedback, that you're getting good feedback. And to make sure that you're prioritizing it effectively, especially in a remote environment when you don't know what everybody's working on, or if you're doing those things. But then also finding out, how are you compensated? You might check in with HR to see, if they have a policy already in place, or is there, you know, all of those things. I think a lot more goes into it on the back end. But again, like we said, it's already been pre-planned. Like even if you did a really, really great thing, they weren't expecting you to do that really, really great thing to give you maybe a $10,000 bonus, or might not even notice, or might expect it to be a part of your job. Like, oh, I guess that's what we expected. I remember real early in my career, I was in recruiting and we came to work and our chairs were gone. And they said, if you were your own recruiters, if this was your own company, you wouldn't afford chairs. You couldn't afford chairs because you didn't make any starts this week. Oh, true story. They were like, you haven't earned your chairs. Not kidding. That was back when you can abuse employees.
Yeah, that sounds a bit okay. Interesting.
Right.
One tactic, I guess.
Oh, yeah, they didn't last very long, but they did do that. But it made me think about like another way of saying that, of like, what is your expectation? Like, what was so scary about that is I would have never thought anybody would have done that, but didn't know what the expectation was. You know, I think sometimes it can just be a matter of that. But I'd love to know, like, what do you think what mistakes do people make on a regular basis as you hear these stories? And I'm sure you hear some nightmares.
Oh my gosh, of course. I mean, we hear mistakes on both sides, but you know, there's a lot of, I think I think a big part of the reason why people leave companies is because they get frustrated. But then often what we'll say to them is we're like, okay, well, so have you expressed that frustration up the food chain? Are they aware of your frustration? And 9 times out of 10, people will be like, well, no. Or maybe I did say something 3 years ago and I haven't said something since. I'll never forget one of my clients. She said, I'm incapable of getting a pay raise. And I was like, oh, why not? And she's like, well, I asked for one and they said no. And I was like, well, when was that? And she was like, that was 5 years ago. So she not only had she not gotten a pay increase, she also hadn't gotten inflation. So as we know, of course, she was sliding backwards. Anyway, so the fact is you have to ask, but also to your point around expectations, if you're having a conversation about your compensation, your performance, and a frank conversation where you actually invite feedback, yes, you might have an ask, but secondly, hopefully you've been tracking all your wins in our app, in the PepTalkHer app, so you actually have a database of success points, of statistics, of wins, of screenshots of feedback from colleagues or clients or board members, photos of events you've organized, whatever it is. You've then got receipts that you can kind of take into that meeting. Fine. But then also asking for frank feedback to say, like, because if the boss or the leader says to listen, you're not getting a pay increase, that's helpful because you can say, look, I'm disappointed. I'd love to know, what do you need from me between now and 12 months so that it's a no-brainer to say tick, 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 yes, yes, yes in future. And they might say to you, well, you've got to, reduce the cost of the chairs or whatever it is. So that example you had, like whatever, but at least then you need to get clear guardrails of what you're working with, right? And where you're going. And if they can't give that to you, then that's helpful information too, that you then can decide, how am I going to behave based on the fact that I'm not happy with the expectations or the goals that they've given me. And they may be totally unrealistic, but at least so then you can make the decision to either push back against that and see if you can negotiate realistic expectations, or perhaps it's not the place for you or your skill set. Perhaps it's not where your zone of genius is suited, right? But then you have that data. But I find a lot of people, Jackye, and I don't know if this is the same at your company, a lot of people are scared to ask because of the unknown. They don't know what they're going to say. What if they say something negative? I think negative feedback is a gift, because if you don't get that feedback, you'll eventually get made redundant or get fired. I'd rather know now, and then I can say, well, that's ridiculous. I don't agree with that. Or absolutely, I can fix that by doing ABC tweak or getting XYZ course to help me level up. So to me, the biggest mistake that I see is that people are not proactively communicating, in particular up within the organization. So firstly, what are you doing and how are you adding value? And secondly, what do they need from you? Right? Because like, what do they need from you? Because when you were hired 3 years ago, guess what? It's a very different world.
Hi, I'm Stacey Nordwall, host of Toot or Boot, the show that boots burnout culture and calls out corporate nonsense. Each week I talk with bold leaders and good troublemakers who are rewriting the rules of work. We dig into what's broken, what's working, and how to build something better, with a mix of practical advice and humor. If you're ready for a healthier, more human workplace, this is your show.
AI's changed things, the economy's changed things, post-COVID's changed things, your team, the generations coming into your team is changing. And so your role is changing. And that's not easy. And I'm not saying, we all love change as much as some folks, but like, we got to be realistic. I personally would rather have the information and know that it's going to be really difficult or not. And then at least I can act accordingly and upskill where I need to.
Yes, I love hearing that. It's so important of knowing. I think there is a level of fear. And then as a manager, I like to ask at least once a quarter, do you have everything you need to be able to do your job? Because sometimes I'm given an assignment and then I was like, can they even do it? Like, do they need the software? I know I didn't buy that thing. Like, do they have everything they need to be able to be successful? Is it something that I can add? And if it's not, maybe to your point, I can teach them a skill, or I could give them a course or mentorship or partnership or all of these different things, because you want to keep that other knowledge with the organization, because it costs so much to replace people.
It costs so much to replace people. And I'd say 9 times out of 10, the reason that we get hired by corporates is because they don't want the retention of staff. People would much prefer to retain staff, especially diverse staff, right? Because a lot of companies nowadays, as you know, have targets in terms of leadership positions, senior roles, and that talent is churning because we're in high demand. but also because they're not feeling valued necessarily. I actually just recently went to an amazing retreat with someone called Chip Conley, who's ex-Airbnb, and he now runs this organization called the Modern Elder Academy, which is a whole nother conversation. But the question that he used to ask his staff, which I think is adjacent to what you've just said, is, what do you need from me so that you can do the best work of your life, the best, most fulfilling work of your life? And I just think it's such a lovely framing, because to your point, it's like, do you need a course? Do you need a better laptop? You know, do you need a co-working space, whatever, but also kind of to make it the best work. It also allows people and kind of forces them to think bigger than day to day and to go, well, actually, and maybe you can do it, maybe you can't, but at least it's opening those neural pathways for them to sort of take the blinkers off of the hustle and the day to day and go, if I was to do the best work, wow, what could that look like?
Right. That, I think about that a lot, especially when I'm looking at trying to be more inclusive and have people feel like they belong. What would it look like if, you know, we ask, you've heard this at different conferences, I'm sure, like, if money wasn't an object, what would it look like? But if fear wasn't in place, like, what work would you be doing right now? If you weren't afraid of, like, the lights being cut off, or, you know, having to mow the grass of like a 5-acre property, like, what would you?
It's such a great question, because it gets us out of our now. It gets us out of the day, and because you get stuck, right? And you know what it's like. We're all creatures of habits, and our neural pathways fire in a certain way, and that's easy. It's what we're used to. It's instinctive. So to get out of that, it takes those bigger questions or a change of scenery to kind of really think more laterally and more creatively, which is, I think, ultimately what we want from our staff, because they may actually have better solutions than you or I could ever even hypothesize, right?
That's right. That's right. And that always hurts me to think that they had the idea all along, but nobody was listening, or nobody was open to listening. I am the worst, because I hate it when Katie's not here, because I'm really bad about keeping time. And I'm like, oh no, I have 4 questions and we're getting to like an hour. Really quick, I want you to be able to talk about the app. And then I want to know something that you think everyone should get. So I'll put that out there. But first, will you tell me more about the app and our listeners? Because I've heard you mention it a couple of times, but I don't know what it is.
You know, so the app is, you know, it's part of our impact work. So the PepTalkHer app is free. It's basically like a Fitbit, except instead of tracking your steps and how many kilometers you ran or how many miles you ran this week, it tracks your work milestones. So it's going to be like, Jackye, how many podcasts did you record this week? How many one-on-ones did you have this month? You know, how many positive pieces of feedback did you receive from your management team this quarter, or whatever it is? So it allows you to kind of input consistently throughout the year, and it will prompt you to underline your wins and to take a moment to just enter them into the app, right? Super simple. So you'll get like motivational quotes, and I'll just be like, what are you really proud of this week? And maybe it's that I didn't yell when so-and-so stuffed up that project. It can be a small thing, or it can be, you know, I signed a $2 billion deal, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. You can record it, and it's private to your eyes only. And then you can export that. There's all, you know, as a Google Doc, as a PDF, whatever, so that you can kind of print it off and take it into those performance review conversations. You can use it to update your LinkedIn, or to like your resume, or to, you know, when you have to do those self-reviews, you kind of then have the data, because, you know, it's normally like, what did I do the last 2 weeks? Right? Because I don't know what I had for dinner last Tuesday, let alone my biggest milestone in February. Life moves quickly, right? It comes at you. So the idea is that if you're tracking every week, okay, maybe that's ambitious, but at least if you ignore some of our alerts, but maybe you do it once a month, at least you then have 12 data points at the end of a year that speaks to how awesome you are. And it's also, so it's like a practical app, but then there's also, we worked with a psychologist as we were developing it, because it's also, we're trying to shift people's perception of themselves, because our brains are hardwired for negativity. So when we get negative feedback or a negative email, or when we get reprimanded for stuffing up a project, we spiral, right? And we spend 3 or 4 days in a funk, and it's whatever. But I bet, Jackye, if you get a positive Slack message or a positive email, it's kind of nice for 10, 15 minutes, and then probably you forget about it, right?
Right.
So we're trying to like make a place where you can recall those things, screenshot them, and put them in one place. So when you're having a really bad day, you can be like, let me just see, what did I do this year? Oh, actually, maybe I'm not as rubbish at my job as I think I am. This is just a bad day or a bad moment. And actually, I've done all these amazing things. So that's kind of the premise behind it. And as I said, it's free. It's a big part of the impact work that we just want to put out there to help support folks at work.
I love that. Well, What is one thing you want our listeners to take away from Meggie Palmer and Pep Talk? Like, what's one thing you want our listeners to take away?
Well, I'd say, the thing that excites me and the thing that I would love to impart to everyone is that you have agency, right? Like in your job as a people leader, in your job as an individual contributor, in your job seeking process right now, all of you have agency, right? I know that things can feel really tough. I know that things are really tough. And also there's steps that you can take today that can change your trajectory. Right. So I would just say, like, don't feel like you're alone. Feel free to reach out to folks. Like, obviously find Jackye and I, we're both on LinkedIn. Like, reach out to folks, like, get support from people around you. If you're having a tough time at work, or if you're spiraling, or if you're not understanding how you can get up to those competencies that are required, ask for help. Text someone on your team and be like, hey, my manager said I have to do this if I want a pay rise next year. Could we get coffee and talk about it? Or text a school friend and be like, I've had the worst week of my life at work. Can you just send me a warm and fuzzy? I just need something positive to hold on to. Like, I really think we should lean on our communities more, because sometimes we operate in silos, and COVID didn't help. But there's this exercise, Jackye, that we do, and let me give it away to folks today. If you're having a bad day, I always say to people, just text a friend. It's like a phone a friend exercise, and just say, I've just listened to this podcast with this amazing person, Jackye, and she had this guest called Meggie. And Meggie told me to text a friend. And the one thing you're going to text a friend is, what would you say is my best quality? That's it. That's the text. So I just want everyone listening to send that text. What would you say is my best quality? And let's see what you get back, because it's kind of remarkable when we outsource to others and ask them how they see us. It's kind of amazing how they actually perceive us in ways that perhaps we've never even knew about ourselves. And that can be a really lovely way to buoy you when you're having a tough time at work, or to lift your spirits if things are maybe not 10 out of 10 for you right now. And I would just encourage you to send that text as often as you need to throughout the year, right? Get your team to send that text, right? Send some positive, proactive texts to people on your team. Give them feedback that's positive and unsolicited, because I guarantee you'll make their day, if not their week. And as I said, we all have the agency to change how we're showing up and our trajectory, and also to positively impact others as well.
I love that. Katie, I laugh. One time I said, I would love your feedback, only positive. I'm only accepting positive feedback. And it was like, she took a minute. It was like, she was like, I think it's great. I was like, thank you. I was like, she was like, why are you only accepted positive feedback? I was like, I've already turned it in. There's nothing I can do about it. It's as perfect as it's going to be. I love it. But I felt really like uncomfortable. Like, I need some positive feedback. So like, it's kind of on that.
And we do feel uncomfortable though, right? Because we don't do it enough, but it's like a muscle. If we do this at the gym once or twice, nothing's going to happen. But if I do this every day for 3 years, all of a sudden I'm the female Arnold Schwarzenegger with massive biceps, right? And so we wanted to kind of create that strong muscle memory in our brain of like, I'm texting my best mates from college. I'm texting my best mate from primary school. I'm asking for positive feedback only today, right? Like,
that's right.
They don't care. They love you anyway. You can text your sister, right? Your roommate, whoever it is, your partner. You can ask your dog. I'm not sure if they'll respond in the way you want them to. But like, let's just get comfortable asking, because actually that changes things in the brain, which I think is so exciting.
I love that. And I think when I think about what I want our listeners to take away is that if you see a problem and you can change it. Like, empower yourself to make a change. You don't have to wait. I love this, like, we didn't talk a lot about it, but just going from, oh my gosh, I'm getting underpaid. Absolutely not. Like, I'm not going to let anybody else do this. And now you formulated this business so that other people don't have that experience is wonderful.
Well, and we all have that capacity. Like, you do that every day at work. You see things at work that don't work and you fix it. Right. And I know that your listeners are doing the same thing. Right. But sometimes because you're really good at it, you don't always notice as well. Because when you're in your zone of genius or your zone of excellence, you think it's quote unquote easy. Because it feels easy, because it's good and it's natural for you, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't have value to the business. So that's the other thing. I think sometimes when we're trying to like figure out how are we adding value, like what is our impact, it's helpful to crowdsource that from people around us, because they might be like, oh my gosh, you bring all of the good vibes to the weekly meetings, which is hard to quantify, but that's valuable for a leader. Leaders want those good vibes people in the team, right? So crowdsourcing and asking other people to reflect back to you your best qualities is super powerful. And yeah, to your point, Jackye, like, if you see a problem that you think really, really sucks, like, find a way to fix it. It's a fun journey.
I love that. Meggie, thank you so much for joining us today. And thanks to all of you listeners here on the Inclusive AF podcast. Katie will be back next week and we'll talk to you soon. So thank you.
Thanks, y'all.
It's like I'm trying to click the button.
Thanks,
Let's see.
Jackye. You're the best. You're such a pro. Look at you go. I love it.
I'm like the worst. I'm like, oh, where's
You're
the button?
not the worst.
I think
You're
I did
great.
it. Great. I love talking to you. You're in Brooklyn, you said.
Yeah, because whereabouts are you?
So I'm actually in Texas.
Okay. Oh, awesome.
And so
is Textio in Texas?
No, we are in Seattle. Most is in Seattle. And then I am here, but there are some people in 9 different states that we have.
Wow, awesome.
And so that's been, I was just in Seattle, and I think I'm going in a couple of weeks. But I'm lucky in that I am in Waco, even though I make fun of it all the time because I'm like, I'm in this godforsaken town. But I do love it. I always just tease because it's like, it's small, it's in the middle of nowhere. People are always like, how are you doing it? And I'm like, I don't know. You know, we don't have a mall or any of we don't have a Trader Joe's or, you know, any of those types of things, but I love being in the middle of nowhere, and it suits me. I'm blessed to be able to be here.
That's awesome.
But my kid is in Bay Ridge, so I go up to New York quite a bit.
Well, let's do coffee or cocktails or whatever. I would love that next time you're in town. Bay Ridge is the best. We used to live we're in Carroll Gardens. We used to live just around the corner.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So it's like that. Yeah. And so it's always nice. I love it because you can always meet people in New York. There's always like, you know, when we have a minute. So the next time I get there, I'll give you a call.
I would love that.
This should be, I think we're 2 or 3 weeks out. We've literally lost an episode.
Oh, for the podcast. Oh, no worries. Just let me know. And what can I do to help support you? Like, how can I be of service to you?
No, that's all. It's like, so just when we have it, just promoting the Inclusive AF, we've got, I don't even know how many years we've been doing it now. We've got
do you love
episodes. I do love it.
I
do love it. So we'll be switching it and doing more of I was like, we're going to have to enhance. We're doing more of the blogs and more of the shorts and putting it all together. So it's going to take a lot of work, but promoting those is really helpful.
That's so fun. And then this is a random question. Are you involved with Makers at all? Do you know the Makers Summit?
I have heard of the Makers Summit, but I'm not involved in the Makers Summit.
I feel like you would love it. Do you want me to connect you with them? They're the best.
Yeah.
I'm on their advisory board, and it was so random how I got involved, but it's like really great. And I just feel like you would love the community of folks there. It's really cool.
I would love to.
You'd probably know a lot of them, to be honest. You'd probably know. Yeah, a lot of the folks have similar roles to you in similar kind of tech companies and stuff like that. So I'm sure you'd be
I've heard of it, but I've never been involved. So I'd love to. That's fun.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I'll text Janae there today, and let me reach out to her today, because that could be kind of something fun and interesting for you, and also for the podcast, you know, amplification. For sure, count us in. And then anything else, just let me know. And are you loving Textio? Is it a fun role?
I do. I've been here almost 3 years, and I love the HR tech place, but also, like you were talking about, like, I didn't realize that people didn't know how to recognize like fairness or being inclusive or understanding that balance. I didn't realize it. So I found kind of a niche market. So I really love being able to do that and share lessons that make the world of work easier, because it's hard enough.
That's awesome. Because how many folks have you guys got now? Have you all got a Textio?
We've got 60.
Okay.
So we're
punch above your weight, but you're like really good brand recognition.
Yeah, we do punch up. Yeah, it's funny. Punch above your weight. We do. Like,
do you think?
We're fully like we're sitting we were in New York in like the Louis Vuitton office, and we were just sitting there, and I was just like, it's wild that we're here. We were in Warner Brothers and Louis Vuitton that week, and the Calvin Klein brands, and we're doing all this stuff. And I was like, and we're just this little, you know.
Are you still privately held?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, we're VC backed.
Okay.
So, so we are, but we're still VC backed. But we do. I mean, all of our clients are like major enterprise. We have some that are like of the scale size, but the majority is of that large size company.
And I'm just trying to think if I should be, who's your decision maker normally?
Well,
I mean, your product?
They end up being, it's changing. So now it's like the head of talent, usually CHROs or heads of talent acquisition, because we just started doing we had the talent acquisition or the recruiting product, and now we have like performance feedback. And we're working on that being a standalone product. So we have the performance feedback, and then we've been adding for the job descriptions. And then we've built our own AI behind it like years ago. And so we have like that one that we actually work on to start reducing bias, which is really nice. So like you can have that communication.
Interesting.
Like, because that's the problem. We're working on more ways. I always say it's like hired to retire conversation. I personally need Textio for Slack, because that's where I send the worst messages. If I'm going to get fired, it's because I sent a Slack message that was
And does it integrate into Slack?
No.
Okay, interesting.
Not right now.
Interesting. I mean, you need to tell their product team. That sounds like an amazing.
I know. I'm telling you, they're working on it. They're working on all these things, but now we're so small.
Okay, interesting. Okay. This is interesting. And then are there any other companies that you work with? Do you ever you don't offer any services, right? It's all tech.
Yeah.
Interesting. Because it's so affordable. I feel like your product's really affordable.
Yeah. I mean, like if we offer, well, some people think so. I always say we're very proud of our product. But if we no, I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, are there any of your CHR? I mean, maybe not your team, but are there any of your CHROs that you reckon we should talk to from a services side? Because I'm just wondering if there's places where we could even like sell in Textio to some of our clients, because we work with wouldn't probably be enterprise, it'd be probably team specific, but like at UBS Bank, I'm thinking there's someone, and even at you probably already work with Salesforce, I would imagine, but
we have worked with Salesforce. But see, the thing is, it's like trying to figure out what is interesting now. It's like we're working on like interview feedback. I think what's been interesting is, I think the difference when talking to other people is that we have built the model. So we've been looking, and it's very specific language. We're so used to being able to Google, like people forget that was built for search. Like, even though it can do like give you recipes and it can find different sales, it was not made to find discounts. That's why you have various apps. Like this is an app that help you find discounts or coupons or whatever. What happens with us is like, oh, I can use this product to build a job description. And we have to say, well, our model is specific for job descriptions. The model was built so that you could write a good job description, not so you could write a letter or your resume. It's made for that purpose. And we check the bias, and we, built it internally, which is a huge difference. I think that we'll see more now. But it's hard to differentiate when so many people say that they do the same thing and they don't really. I found, if you look at like ChatGPT and you said make this less bias, what they end up doing a lot is making it more formal, the language, which is actually more biased, just a different group. It's just you're just being more biased to
a different subset,
right? Like people who are neurodiverse won't get these complex sentences. Not that they don't understand, it's just that it's more difficult to understand, so that your point may not be coming across the way that you want to. Or people where English is a second language may not be getting the point because you're not using simple language that was built to give somebody a response to how they're doing at work. And so that, I think, is a new challenge, but we're trying to make people spend so much time trying to get their language right, to get their conversation and their impact right.
That's why I think your price point makes it like a no-brainer for folks, right? Anyway, that's what I think.
Well, thanks. I'm going to put Meggie on the front page. Meggie said.
I think it's really cheap. I think it's very affordable for the value that they're getting. Let's keep in touch. And then if there are any folks that you think that we should chat to, we really help up. We don't. I mean, the app is free anyway, but we really are adding value with the L&D training programs and the exec coaching services.
I like that. I was going to say, I don't know, it makes sense. We should figure out, I was talking before, it's almost like we should build a network of people that are trying to be more inclusive and trying to figure out those things where it's like, these are some of the tools that we feel comfortable with. We should have another conversation on that. So we could just have because, I end up consulting, and I'm not a consultant, but it's like, here are some things that you can try, because, those are things. It's a totally different lane. So,
yeah. Well, yeah, let's do that. We'll chat again. I'll connect you with Janae. I'll email her now, and yeah, I'll look forward to the podcast coming out. But let me know if there's anything I can ever do as well.
Thanks, Meggie. I appreciate it.
No
Thank
worries,
you so
Jackie.
much.
Speak to you soon. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.